when I meet new people just out and about running errands, whatever, and they happen to ask me what I do for a living, they always want to ask me, is what I'm hearing about the market true? Are prices going to go down? Are rates going to go down? All of these things. And I think there's a lot of like political turmoil. Like, I guess turmoil is not the right word. Perhaps it's just unpredictable. And people are trying to figure out how to make their next money move, their next big money move. I don't know that there really is a recipe for success. You know what I mean? I'm still seeing people move for reasons that are different than I want the money conditions to be set, exactly right for me. People who are saying I want to wait for this economic thing to happen still don't seem to be the people who are moving. But the people who are moving because of their jobs, because of schools, because of family members and other things outside of their circumstances, or people who just happen to fall in love with the house, which is happening in key pockets in certain neighborhoods. So I say all that as sort of a preface to what are people expecting right now? Like, what is the layman thinking that is happening in the real estate market and thinking what's about to happen in the real estate market? Because there's only certain things I've seen that are unique to this quarter and last quarter.
Man, I think trying to think of the average person I've talked to recently. I feel like I don't feel like there's many people who have a strong like sense of I know what's going to happen in the near future. Most people aren't operating with like a really clear idea of what's going to happen over the next 6-12 months. And so I think people are just making very like local decisions based on local information, like a particular school system or a particular market, and knowing what the inventory looks like right now in a lot of areas around town. Like on the buying side of things, you've got a slower paced market and more listings to consider than you have in a long time, and that makes you feel a certain way. And so I think there's in big picture, nationwide and worldwide, there's just a lot of question marks, and most people have a lot of question marks, and the things that you do know are what's happening here, locally. So I think that's the only real place that people are making like confident decisions from, is just knowing what's happening here. Yeah.
It seems to also be a little bit different for each specific neighborhood. Like what might be the case for neighborhood A and in zip code A could be drastically different than what's happening in zip code B. And here's something I specifically want to ask you about, because I see it just in my day-to-day, but I want to know what the common perception is of buyers right now and how they have different behavior than they did in the past. Do you think that buyers have more negotiating power now? And if so, how are they weaponizing that power to get better buyer results?
Yeah. I think still the majority of people haven't quite adjusted to the new territory of having a significant amount more leverage than you did the last time you were searching
as
for
a buyer.
Yes, as a buyer.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are still, every month or so, I still definitely get engaged with a highly competitive multiple offer situation, either from selling side or buying side, but they're much more far and few between. And it's much more common to be the only person that the seller's working with.
You mean it's much more common now for the buyer to have the only offer on the table? One buyer, one offer, and that's it.
And that's a different dynamic. If the last time you were in the process was in 2021, then you operate differently right now. Like, you stand your ground a good bit more, and expect the seller to negotiate with you more, and make I don't know, the terms in your offer more conservative in terms of how many contingencies you're putting in there, and and goodness, the odds of getting a contingent offer accepted, contingent on selling another property, are higher than ever.
That's interesting. I think I've seen that too.
Yeah. So I can't remember what your initial question was.
It was really just about leverage, about the amount of perceptive power that buyers have compared to how it used to be.
Yeah. So just kind of understanding the territory is way different than the last time you were engaged with the market. Yeah. And then the flip side of that applies too. I've had several clients who bought the house that they're selling right now back in 2020, 2021. And they're like, well, we had to do absolutely everything necessary to win.
Well, in that case, they're kind of getting what feels to them like the raw end of both deals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It can be tough to accept that you're selling in a very different market than when you bought in, because you want to get the experience that the person you bought the house from had, and that it's not often the case.
They saw greener grass when they were going through their last transaction, but now it's like that pasture isn't even the same pasture.
There's pros and cons, there's pros and cons in every part of the market cycle. So
okay, well, this makes me wonder, because last year there was just so much conversation about the lawsuits and the litigation and the NAR settlement, and a lot of people seemingly being very worried about buying side agents expressing value and maybe further justifying like their commission, their compensation, and all of these things. Now that the environment is a little bit different, especially now compared to what it was a handful of years ago, do you feel like buyers agents are more relevant because there's more that they are coaching their buyers to do, because buyers have more negotiating horsepower than they used to? Or do you feel like it really hasn't made much of a difference?
Interesting.
Because I wonder if they're more relevant now because buyers don't understand their true potential now, but they might need the coaching of a real estate professional to guide them along the way more than before. I don't know.
Well, yeah, interesting. I think it has continued to make all the conversations around commission and services, the value proposition and the services provided and what that's worth, made those a lot clearer and happening at the right time, at the forefront of everything. And so,
yeah, you would not want to have that conversation at the end.
No, or just not have it and try and like slide an agency agreement in there. Yeah, it's, but no, I had a wonderful conversation over the last couple of days, between the initial strategy session with a buyer, two parents and a child. An adult, two parents and a daughter, an initial strategy session with them, and then gave them their paperwork to take home and read over. And then the next day they had lots of great questions about the commission and how and when it's paid and what happens in this scenario. And man, we talked more in depth about all that than I ever have. And it was really good because we just got very, very clear on, services provided, agreeing on what it's
trust,
worth.
I would think.
Yeah, and that was one of my main points is let's take our time and talk through this as much as possible until we are in a high trust environment. So I have experienced that as time has gone on as very positive, I think. In terms of your question was like, how has it impacted the buyer agent environment?
Yeah. Do you think that the way that buyers are exercising in the market now creates a greater need for a good buyer's agent? Are you more needed as an advocate for your client that is a buyer as a buying agent now? Because I feel like I have seen people say things like, well, a few years ago, it was list to live, and I really just wanted to be a listing agent because that's where I could really grow my business, and that was good for me, and the clients were there. The clients that I wanted to capture at least were there. And then a lot of those same people seem to be saying, oh, well, now I'm accepting buyers again. Mm-hmm. And I hear people say this, forgive me if it sounds a little bit cynical, I hear people say this as if it is a conscious choice of theirs, Because it is. I mean, they are making the decision to
To
consider representing buyers more than they had the past couple of years. But I also think that there's something more circumstantial encouraging them to do it. I think that they feel like the balance of buyer seller is a little bit more balanced than it was before, and they might not be thinking that all of the good stuff, so to speak, that was in their mind on the seller side is there anymore, and that they really need to, and the market is encouraging them, and they have, as much as they say it's what they want to do, they need to shift more to representing buyers than they had.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I mean, in terms of the real estate sales industry, it's definitely still the smart thing to do is to have a sustainable and lasting business is definitely still to focus on listings. But as the market is balanced out more, I mean, in recent months and talking with other agents at our market center, kind of the realization hit that it is a great time to be working with a buyer client, transitioning out of just a really, really challenging many years where man, when you linked up with a new buyer client, you just had to continuously give yourself and them a serious pep talk, because it's going to be a difficult road. We're going to get it done, but let's talk about how challenging it's going to be and set expectations and everything. And these days, I just kind of realized recently that it's a pretty great time to like pick up a new buyer client. The leverage that they have in the market, and sometimes it can be a shorter path from start to finish with a buyer than with a seller in a particular area these days. And so that's just interesting. It's just a different part of the market cycle, but I think it's a healthy, at least for real estate agents, it's a healthy perspective shift to be like, hey, if all you do is list properties, that's half of the industry, and just what a significant part of the business, making buyers a priority is. I don't know.
Well, it is interesting statistically that homes priced in a certain range or placed in a specific geographic area that were not sitting are sitting now. And I saw something interesting the other day. Want to know what it feels like from your perspective about inventory levels. Mm-hmm. Every state's a little bit different, but in our state, it looks like we are just about at the break-even mark of inventory as we were pre-pandemic in 2019.
Yeah.
Very, very similar.
Yeah.
Also suggests that next year we will be on the upside of that. It's going to be a little bit higher than it was, let's say, than it was in 2019. Mm-hmm. I know that people still record too few months of inventory than what's really good for a healthy market, even with more increase that we could have next year. But the inventory levels have been better than where it has been.
Yeah.
And with certain people being dormant on the market because of insurance, mortgage rates, the difference between prices and salary, I mean, all those economic factors are very, very prevalent, very fascinating. But I wonder if what we are seeing is just simply a focus on inventory or a recognition of the inventory. Like, are buyers able to have the negotiating power that you were just talking about a moment ago because there are that many more homes on the market? And is that going to last? What do you think about like the perceptive level of inventory, and also like why are people moving? Like what are you saying? Like what is the it factor to encourage people to move? Because it still doesn't seem like a ton of people are, because you can't look at any one professional's I guess book of business or busyness levels because there's so fewer professionals than there were that are active. So I feel like that could be a misleading take on the situation.
I think here in Birmingham, in the inventory story is interesting because yeah, we are slowly and surely trending back towards a balanced market in terms of months of inventory. Like, I hear different numbers from different people, but between 5 to 7 months of inventory, it's kind of like a balanced market, just in terms of that particular data point.
Do you know if that's where we are now?
We are so in different, like in Homewood, we stay right between 1 to 2 months of inventory.
So no.
Yeah, but in like another general area I monitored, like downtown Birmingham from South Side over to Crestwood, we have been in 4 to 5 months of inventory.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
it's close.
so you can look at city of Birmingham in general. You can look at Shelby County in general. You can look at like Vestavia Hills. They all have different.
So I know the school zones are different, but how different are the prices in those two areas that you just mentioned?
Which one? Jefferson County,
You're talking
Shelby
about
County?
you're talking about Homewood being 1 to 2 months, and then you're talking about Southside Birmingham being 4 to 5 months.
Yeah.
I know the school zones are different, but what about the prices? Is that having a big effect?
Still just seeing like very moderate appreciation in all of those areas. One thing that I am seeing consistently across all of them is the sales to list price ratio going down below 100%. Because over the last,
I've seen that everywhere.
yeah, totally. The average is probably like 98%, and in some areas it's 95% or less. But even
Because it used to be inverted.
yes, the average would be 101 to 105%. Yep, of list price. So consistently seeing that go down. But it's interesting to think about the inventory level slowly rising because the number of sales has slowly gone down year over year. And so to some extent, I think what we see as inventory levels going up is really just less and less people engaging with a transaction.
That is
So
fascinating.
it's
that you say
not
that.
necessarily number of listings coming onto the market. It's less listings being sold, which is just the other part of the months of inventory equation. So part of the reason why inventory is going up is there's just less people out there shopping and buying the houses off the market. So there's more sitting there relative to the number of sales going down. So
I would think that it would be an especially troubling time if you are trying to sell a home in a mid-priced neighborhood market and you have been there for years and years. Let's just say you were there before the COVID era, because I think that's an interesting like hallmark in the development of the real estate world. So if you were there before, years passed, and then all of a sudden you receive notice from your employer that you're moving from the southeast to the northwest, you've got to pick up and go. To try to list your home now, maybe you have fantastic equity, so you have a little bit of wiggle room. But I would imagine when you have to list it, relocation company or not, and you have to sell it in a pinch to support where you got to go and you're constrained by time, with the pace that I'm seeing from buyers, I would feel like that would be tough.
it could be intimidating. I love to just let's ignore everything but what we can control. Not ignore, but let's focus. Let's spend our energy on what we can control. There's 3 things: the price, the presentation, or the condition. Sorry, let me start over. Those are 2 different things. There's 3 things we can control: the price, the condition, and the marketing, or the exposure. So exposure should be your real estate agent's job, just making sure you have as many eyeballs on it in the best light possible. Condition, you can decide. Do you want to renovate? Do you want to do XYZ, landscaping, curb appeal, interior paint, staging? You can choose the condition that you want to put the property in. And then the last thing you get to choose is the price. Those are your controllables to be successful. You can't control the neighborhood. You can't control the market. You can't control interest rates, etc. But those 3 things are the levers you can pull to be successful. Apart from that, you don't have control over the other things. So I think besides just focusing on only the things you can control, it's more important than ever to focus on your position in the market. So are you the most competitive listing in your area at any particular given time? Knowing that there's only so many buyers out there looking in your area, whenever one comes into the neighborhood, know how your listing measures up to the other 3 that they're going to go see on the same day, and are you the best value? If not, you're going to be helping those other ones sell before yours does. And how quickly do you want it to sell? Do you want to be okay with 1 or 2 other listings selling before yours does? Just have a real clear picture on your competition and what's under contract right now, not just what's sold over the last 6 months. So you have to look ahead as much as you looked behind at comps previously. So that if you get caught off guard and you have to sell and you completely bewildered by the state of the market right now, you have to focus on, am I the most compelling value in the area right now? Because you'll still sell. You just focus on some different things.
It's very interesting. And I feel like this is like what you just described to me is something that I would want to hear if I were buying and I were your client, like on the market right now, because that's the value that you can provide, because you're describing where the competition is. And where the competition is just a matter of numbers and the condition of the market at this time. Because where it may have been in recent history, I would venture to say, the buyers are the competition against themselves. There's so many buyers that are wanting to buy because conditions are promoting that if you have 3 listings in the same neighborhood and there are 15 buyers, well, okay, like only the top 3 buyers, most competitive buyers, are going to get those 3 properties. I'm making it more simple than it actually is, just to try to illustrate a point. But now it's like you might have only 1 buyer for 3 listings. So if you can't capture that 1 buyer, and we don't even know how good that 1 buyer is, you just might actually be the only one.
Yep.
And it's fascinating because it is showing you where you have to stand out and who you're trying to win against, because it seems like it's so much more of a battle against other listings for the people who are doing that than it is buyers trying to be the brightest star of a buyer.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I guess you could say that right now we're getting into a new territory of sellers are competing against each other more hardcore than buyers are competing against each other. And if you say that inventory is going up just because partly just because there's less people out buying, then that means instead of as a buyer going into the market, it's not necessarily that there's more listings for you to consider. There's just less buyers that you're competing against. So you do have more inventory to consider. And on the flip side, that means that as a seller, you have 1 showing appointment get booked. The importance of how that goes is twice as important as it was, a few years back, because you're going to get a lot of showings. So the battle back then was how do you deal with all these showings? Nowadays you've got a showing, very important. Let's make sure it goes as well as it possibly can and make sure that we are as good of a value or better than the other houses that they're going to see that day too. It's just new, different territory. It's fun.
That'll make sense. And it's interesting to hear you talk about this because you're also referencing multiple neighborhoods, which I feel like that diversity is what's kind of bringing this to light a little bit stronger. I have a layup for you. How unrealistic are sellers right now in the price they want to take to market? Or are they thoroughly realistic?
Yeah. I've definitely seen all the levels of being realistic. It just comes down to what is your motivation to sell? What is your sense of urgency? Are you in a place where you are okay with it taking a few months and a price reduction, or are you in a situation where we need this to sell in less days on market than average, which you can do. So I think as long as you are realistic about your time frame and your real true motivation, people can be very realistic. I think the general struggle for a seller to really engage with and understand is not just looking backwards at closed sales in our comparables, but looking at our active listings. And again, just looking forward and understanding it's equally as important to focus on our competition as it is the comps that we use for our pricing. So sometimes that can be a struggle to get them to engage with.
Well, that is interesting because there might be a different trend line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Looking a little bit further out into the future.
Yep.
Yeah. Than the comps suggest from several months past.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. How far back can you really regard a comp?
Well, an appraiser is usually going to try and find something within 6 months or less. Okay. And if you can't find it within 6 months, then you reach out a little bit further in terms of proximity to the listing. And then if you can't find what you need to find, then they'll go a little bit more back in time. But we want to see 3 to 6 months or less. Yeah.
I'm also really interested. I know nobody has a magic 8-ball. I know that the media kind of blows Fed rate cuts and a lot of other things out of proportion. But I'm really interested to see where the winter market goes, like this next winter cycle. Mm-hmm. What are your projections? Like what do you think is the most, what would shock you the least? Let me ask it that way. What would shock you the least about how the winter market will feel this next winter?
I would be least shocked if there's hardly any change at all. If whatever change happens is not exciting enough for many people to talk about.
Is that virtually always the case? That there really isn't much of a change, and we just like to pretend like there's going to be?
When it comes to this conversation, I really just make sure I'm friends with smart people who are paying attention to all the different analysts, because I just feel like it's 50-50. But
yeah, some of it's just sort of like
glean really
smoke and mirrors.
I don't know if I'd say that, but
like, is there really, like, yeah, statistics matter. Yeah, there is a difference in the power dynamic of the sides of the transaction. Like, all that stuff I think is objectively true and interesting. But I mean, the world that is the real estate game just keeps revolving, right? Like, it's just, there's still going to be buyers and sellers.
Yeah, it's where life happens. You're always going to be living in a house. Until we stop living in houses, it's going to be a very important industry. In terms of the question about basically interest rates, mostly, like what do we think? If someone asked me that, I would literally just ask you. And then
we would all love to know.
Maybe put that in my own language, but I just ask people who I know are really following the analysts and the strong predictions.
I think the biggest thing for people to realize is that if we were to rewind and go look back in 2022, where we saw, I think I'm right in saying this, we saw the most aggressive climb in consumer mortgage interest rates within a 6-month period than we had ever recorded in history before. It was either that or the second most aggressive time. I can't remember.
Oh, well, I think interest rates had never doubled in a single calendar year ever before.
It's something like that. Yeah. Like that sounds right. And I mean, it was dramatic. I remember, like, even early spring, people were really on edge. And then by the end of that year, like into that fall, I mean, it was dramatically different. But what people don't know, because there's no real point in knowing this if you don't exercise in this realm. There's stability in the mortgage market with mortgage investors who are locking and hedging bets for pending transactions when rates go up quickly, because they're not going to lose the customer. The customer's not going to say, I'm sorry, mortgage investor A, I want to go with mortgage investor B because I'm getting a worse rate. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not really on the radar. Mm-hmm. In fact, people were doing the opposite. They were trying to spend more money to get a longer rate lock period because they were building a house or had a longer timeline to close, and they didn't want what the rate would be at the time that they're ready. They wanted to go ahead and get that rate now, but the home wasn't ready to purchase. Yeah. So they had to really stretch out that timeline, and wasn't soon thereafter where investors were like, no, we're cutting that off because we're losing money holding out those bets because rates are different now. Mm-hmm. Like, we had to hold that out for you. Yeah. And now we're losing.
That makes sense.
But when rates go up dramatically, it preserves the likelihood of conversion for all of those early locks. Uh-huh. But when it goes down,
Yeah.
if it were to go down anywhere near as dramatically as it went up,
Yeah.
all of those locks are in jeopardy because all of those consumers are going to wise up and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so if everybody jumps ship on the bet that the investor took because they're spending money, that's why they call it the hedge, to try to get you to close,
Mm-hmm.
they can't have you go. And so that's why a lot of people are like, what if rates go down a lot? And I'm like, well, really, the likelihood of them going down enough for you to make a move is virtually non-existent because the market can't sustain that. Like it would be relocking and lock loss Armageddon. And I don't think people understand how much money, because dare I say it, the only player who really has like the yes or no stamp for a transaction, it's not the buyer seller, it's not the listing agent, buying agent, it's not the closing attorney, it's not the loan officer, it's the lender with the underwriter's help. Mm-hmm. And if they fund it, it's a go. Mm-hmm. And if they don't fund it, it's not a go. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they're going to abide by guidelines, but if it's not a good investment for the lender's not going to spend the lender's own money.
Yeah.
If that buyer and the property are a bad investment. It has everything to do with that. And if the answer is yes, everybody has a deal.
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, nobody has a deal. Like, you wouldn't spend your money on a bad investment.
Yeah.
There's going to be no deal.
Yeah.
And so when you couple things like that, where you could have a situation that is a bad investment, and too many people are trying to do that, and then too many people are being flippant about their lock commitments because they're trying to find the next best deal in a very tight window and go to another mortgage investor for a lot of changes. It's like, I've been a part of that game for a long time. You got to be very careful with that game because it could get really detrimental really fast, and you don't want to disturb all of those big money players on the backside because that's what's funding all of the finance deals on the entire market. So if they're in turmoil because rates are going down too quickly, then now the whole industry is going to like really feel the pain of longer timelines because people are trying to be more careful. All of those things, I think, or maybe it's too condensed and too constrained because people are trying to close faster, and it creates a lot of stress because they don't want to lose the lock. I don't know. It's something that I think about because people love asking the question, oh, I'm a consumer. You know, what happens if things get better for me? And there's a point where you have to commit to what it is now and what it would be like 30 to 45 days from now. And understand that is what you're agreeing to. Because if it changes too much beyond here and there, then it could be bad on like an industry-wide scale. And so I think that the safeguard against that is that the industry, with the federal government's help, is not going to go down like dramatically fast. Yeah. You can't have an inverse of what happened in 2022.
No. Especially given that the only reason why we have relatively high inventory levels are because there's less people out buying. So if all of a sudden you had a huge flood of
everyone's underbuilt
opportunistic buyers, then inventory level would shoot way down to half a month, and the appreciation would go wild, and it would
shock me if something like that happened. If a wave like that happened, I would be so blown away because I'd be like, it's not the first time anyone has cared to forecast this, and it would just be like a complete oversight of any regulator. It's like, okay, people just like weren't there to help curb this problem. Yeah. You know, if that's the case, like we lost somebody important somewhere. If a problem like that were to happen. But I don't know. Do you think people do you find that people like to believe in that possibility?
Well, I was just about to ask. So rates are ballpark. Where are rates like today? Or
if you were to look up like average 30-day rates, you're probably going to see in the mid-sixes.
Yeah, mid-sixes. And
but that's all loan types. And it doesn't factor in what people are paying to get a better rate. Yeah. That's just what the average interest rate pure happens to be.
And there were some people closing like on the lower end of the 6 spectrum.
Oh,
right?
I think the range is a bit wider than people realize.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and all that to say, like, that's relatively low from where we've been since like 2022. And I don't think that there's a general perception of, everyone still kind of has this perception that rates are way high, and not really.
Well, it's kind of like the byproduct of the dinner time conversation, right? People like saying, "Oh, rates are high." Well, also on a psychological level, people love to talk about why they can't or shouldn't do something. Like they love to justify it. And at the end of the day, if if the rate is why you can't buy a house, what are you waiting for? Because what's more alarming to me than where rates are historically is the difference between salary growth of prospective home buyers and wage growth. I mean, it's pretty alarming. And I don't know how to wrestle with that, because
Can you expand on that? The difference between salary growth and wage growth.
yeah, so let's say if you were to consider what things were like 35 years ago, even in a higher interest rate market, the ability to purchase an average home on average income was mathematically easier.
To affordability.
Yes, like some people call it like the affordability index or the affordability factor. And rates matter. Rates also feel different depending on how big that loan size is. And then more than anything else, I would argue, is how comfortable can a buyer be with a payment against the money that the buyer is making? And that last piece, I think, is where there's an egregious mismatch if you were to compare it to a baseline of 30 to 35 years ago. And it's really tough. I've heard a lot of people talk about this because I think it's a very, very powerful notion that older generations are speaking to younger generations as if I bought a house, you need to buy a house too.
Yes.
But it is a bit...
a lot of truth there.
It is a bit... Yeah, it's a powerful message. I bought a house, you buy a house too.
Yeah.
Now, when people actually buckle down and look at the statistics, especially for higher price markets in big metropolitan areas, they're seeing like, that's not feasible. And it's not feasible because look at what I'm making and look at what it costs. Look at the standard of living and look at what it costs. People are labeling it as an affordability crisis. I think that it is, as much as you want to consider a crisis being a large percentage of people at a certain age not being able to buy when previous generations could buy, which seems to be counter to generational wealth and American dream concepts. So people are frustrated with that. And people are like, you know what? No, I'm going to forego this, at least for now. This is completely misaligned, because the older generations who are telling me that I can handle this they're not in my shoes. They don't see the money that I'm making and what costs are now. Also, they see what their homes are worth. They love that. They're not talking about what they bought their homes for, or if they are, they're taking great satisfaction out of the growth. But what that illustrates to you is exactly why they're not selling. So you have older generations, and this is hyperbolic. You have older generations that are saying, young generations, you need to buy. I bought, you need to buy. Younger generations are saying, I can't, look at the numbers. And the older generations are then being quiet, because when they do look at the numbers, it's exactly why they are no longer buying.
Yeah.
Why are they resting and dying in place?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the division of wealth is a very interesting thing to observe.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it should be a different way.
Yeah.
All I am saying is buying a home in 2025 as an average income earner in your local market against the average first-time home buyer price, I don't care how much time and focus you want to spend on the interest rate, on the insurance costs, which are a very important factor, basic build costs, appreciation of land, modern day focuses on GDP and standards of living for most Americans, focuses on women returning to work, all of that. And that's also fascinating. Like, why are we having an affordability crisis when we have greater household income? Because the percentage of women working is so much higher. That just doesn't seem to match. And so I look at all this and I think it's that much bigger in the gap. Like if you were to look it up, there are a bunch of different news sources that are reporting on this, and a bunch of different like data aggregators that just show how much of a gap you have to accomplish. Because what used to be, hey, could my salary pay off just the balance, not even considering interest, could my salary pay off the balance in 2 years? The answer used to be yes. Now it's usually 6 or more. We're taking 30-year notes. And a lot of people aren't qualifying for 30-year notes. Something is a little strange there.
This is really, really complicated, and I think also very, like, in a lot of ways, very sensitive topic. My brain always jumps to, I've been blessed in so many different ways in terms of the people that have helped me in my life, and like so much to be grateful for. And I hope to bless people the way that I've been blessed. I feel like in terms of that gap you're describing, like that's one of those things, like you have zero control over that, like as an individual.
What are we going to tell people? Hey, you know what? It's your fault. Go make more money.
Well, and what
okay,
can you
duh.
tell? I think you can. You can tell people. You can encourage people that you may have zero control over the gap. You may have zero control over affordability. You do have zero control over affordability and what the market's doing, and maybe even to some extent your income. I think you have more control over your income than we might admit. But you do have control over which, like. Have you even checked to see like how much you can afford? Like, do you know what your budget is? Like, have you applied for a pre-approval? If so, and you know it's a complete no, then all right, then that's one conversation. But if you haven't checked yet because your parents could afford a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house as their first purchase, and you can only afford a 2-bed, 1-bath house, that's a different conversation, and it's challenging and it's disappointing maybe, but you can still begin on that path as opposed to just staying in the I don't own any property until that gap shortens, because that may just never happen. So it's like, are you taking, like, I would just push to take control over any tiny increment that you can, because that 1% difference in attitude can change the direction that you're going in, regardless of all the other things you don't have control. So are you fighting tooth and nail to take control over the one little bit that you can take control over? And it may be majorly lowering your expectations of the first house you can buy. And I just saw a killer article that my coach shared with me, saying that did you see the average age of a first-time home buyer in 2024?
In 24 or 25?
24. Average age of the first-time home buyer.
I don't know.
38.
That's a lot later than you would have
38
expected,
years
right?
old. Yeah. And so it's definitely a different world than what you were describing 30 years back. The average first-time buyer and what they can afford.
See,
but you can't control that. Like, there's so much that you can just get discouraged by and throw up your hands and be like, it's not like it used to be, and there's no hope for me.
That, I think, is critical. And I love this stance. I love where the conversation is going, because sometimes you have to hit like the rock bottom of what were your previous expectations.
Yeah.
And people will ask me things like, well, how do I buy a home here? If you're telling me that I can't buy this unless I put more down, or I can't buy this because of I can't afford it, whatever, or I can't buy this and reach the payment goals that I have in mind. And I said, well, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and you're not the only one in this position where you said, how can I buy this house with this much out of pocket with this payment? You can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't align. And it is true, I think, that for a lot of people, oh, this is not what it used to be. Well, sure, of course not. Mm-hmm. But are you also getting paid more in your role, in your job now than you were before? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Probably not to the same degree. We were talking about that gap. I don't think they're growing at similar rates, which is part of a problem. But it might not be a problem that you can control unless you're willing to take more of your income into your own hands. Like you said it before. I do think that's an interesting idea, right? That we don't admit how much control we may have over our incomes. Mm-hmm. But all of this is to say, what if we're looking at home buying too frequently in an unrealistic way? Because your home can be a fantastic investment, but only if you treat it as one.
Yes.
And you have to reel back what you want, because there could be something better to get you where you want to go. I get so excited when somebody calls me and they want to buy a home that doesn't require a massive renovation budget. This is not like an investment property flip, so to speak, but they want to buy a home as their primary residence that is not the most updated, but it will still pass appraisal. They're going to buy it for a low cost in the current market because the seller just happens to need to sell it. And then they're going to improve it over time by putting some TLC and dumping some money in there. And I'm like, I don't think you realize that if you do this, you are creating the greatest margin of growth in the value of your home. And you're doing it with the benefits of having it as your primary residence from a financial perspective. That's very, very important.
I can't agree more.
And I'm like, dude, you are really getting the most. You are juicing out the most. And let's say someone is a bachelor or bachelorette. I would encourage everyone to do that. People are like, oh, I'm single, turnkey. I'd be like, I don't mean to sound like Dave Ramsey over here, but if you could buy something that is not turnkey because you don't have other people that you need to support and you're still safe, physically safe in that home, you should really do it. Because the difference between people, if you were to separate the entire U.S. population over the course of their lives into people who own homes, own any property at all, actually, and people who don't own any property at all, the difference in net worth between those two populations is a 40 times difference. 40 times. Now, I know that that's a very simple and easy division of two populations, because you could have somebody who owns just a little bit of real estate and somebody who owns a ton, versus all these people just don't own any. Yeah. But the idea of never owning any real estate, to me, is sad unless you are disciplined and lucrative enough to invest elsewhere to overpower that. Yeah. Because it can be like a forced savings mechanism. Which
definitely exists, but that's a rare individual.
Yeah, it's anomalous, I think. But really, if you can just say, hey, this may not be my dream scenario, but if you can treat this property like a metaphorical stepping stone to get you where you want to go, oh my gosh, what you are doing for yourself is something that you're not going to feel the benefits from for years to come. But oh my goodness, you should really be patting yourself on the back later for all the good things that you're doing for yourself and for your family.
Yeah, agree.
And I feel like people just, I don't know, they aren't. And I'm gonna shift here a little bit because I want to know your response to what I found out about July of 2025. 30% of all residential real estate transactions, purchasers were investors, non-owner occupants. U.S. stat.
I guess in some ways that doesn't surprise me, because if you are looking at the asset class as an investment, you're looking for some optimal factors on the right time to make that investment. And so if you're competing against less retail buyers than ever in recent years, then it's like you see the leverage there easier than someone who's just buying their home would see it.
And they know how to play ball.
You're willing to take as many swings as you need to until you really hit a home run. And so they're willing to take as many shots as they need to. And
30%, can you believe that?
That's a lot. Yeah. So non-owner occupant.
I want to say that I am correct in releasing that statistic. I think it either came from Redfin or Realtor.com.
I believe it.
But I was blown away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely my mentality right now. I'm thinking, it's got to be a really smart time to buy the right investment property. Just if you have the least amount of competition ever, just simple supply and demand. If I'm picturing there's a particular home property seller, and if I'm the only buyer that they have to talk to over the span of a few months, then that's a good opportunity from an investment standpoint. So, yeah, that makes sense.
I think it makes sense as well, because they're swooping in for the kill. They see that gap. They see that opportunity. And while you have buyers saying, I'm going to wait for things to get better, I don't want to buy, investors fine, I'll take it.
So you're kind of saying that having the objective, just analytical approach on, is it a great time to make a investment in a property, like an investor can see that picture clearer, and they're really taking advantage of the moment of the market, as opposed to like an owner occupant. there's a lot of other factors in just besides the numbers, but they might not see that as clearly as an investor sees it.
And yeah, you're hitting on something that would be wonderful for more buyers to adopt, but I feel like people who are buying their primary residence, they don't have the clarity of less emotion, you know, and I think sometimes that can get in the way of the numbers, but that's where like margins are made.
Yeah.
You know, that's where sellers sell for a premium because people can see themselves in the home. And I feel like I'm seeing people say things that are a bit more rational. Like I had a customer who wanted to buy a manufactured home, and the words out of his mouth were, they've got to come down. Talking about the sellers. He's like, they've got to come down or repair this and this because that payment does not support me living in a trailer. He goes, that is absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I'm going to walk away.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to walk away because I just can't get down with that. And I was like, more power to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, I understand. Like if you can't, because you're performing the internal calculus, what I'm paying, that's not worth that. Mm-hmm. Then
and
don't.
That's the value of the property is what the buyer and the seller agree that it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. What is it? What a buyer and seller are willing to agree upon when neither party is under duress or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. Yeah. I don't know like how far you go to establish duress, but for all of those normal players in the market now, however few they happen to be, it is telling us a lot. And I think it's telling us a lot about consumer psychology too, not just the stats. The stats are like the result of that.
Yeah, and to that extent, I was just kind of mentioning. I heard another leader in the Birmingham market recently this week just referenced the idea that, man, if rates ever have in the near future have a 5 at the beginning of the number, just psychologically what impact that's going to have, just because they're not bad right now. It just still has a 6 in front of it.
I just locked one yesterday for a normal residential deal. It has a 5 in front and the cost is not bad at all. And I'm like, are we getting there?
Yeah. And once the general public sees that, if the general public sees that, yeah, a lot will change really quickly.
Then it will just balance back out in home prices.
Yeah. Pros and cons. Everything's a trade-off. It seems like everything's a trade-off.
Oh, that is fantastic. Well, this has been cool. I really like what we started to talk about, especially toward the end of the conversation, in what people are doing and how people are approaching, like what their mindset is inside of this market and the frameworks that exist within it. I mean, what would you, in closing, what would you tell somebody who came to you right now and they said, hey, everyone's telling me so many different things. I don't know who to listen to. My research says this. My family says this. My friends at work are showing me this. I'm a first-time home buyer. I'm 25 years old. I've saved up a little bit of money, and I just need to find a good house to get my journey started. What would you tell them?
Man, I'd say let's completely focus on what we have control over. I'm beating a dead horse on that one, but let's define really clearly what's most important to you in terms of life. What does your life look like? Daily life, what's important to you, and then what's important to you in terms of a home. And let's boil the whole financial picture down to a few simple numbers, like your monthly payment goal, the funds you have to work with for the purchase, and then what that correlates to in terms of a purchase price or a budget. And then let's see what we can accomplish in terms of how many of your what's important to you in terms of the features of a home. Like what does that look like within your budget? And let's just make a straightforward plan on just being realistic, understanding what the market has to offer you right now, and whatever your time frame is, like let's approach it accordingly. Yeah. And when it comes to, you have to be careful who you're listening to in terms of what's right in terms of buying a home, first time, area, type of home, etc. how many homes have they bought over the last year or 10 years or 20 years? How much do you really want them speaking into your experience? So I would say let's focus on the values in a particular area over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. What do we expect in the future for this area in terms of how safe of an investment this is? And look at what our buyers paying for similar properties. Just focus on one of the things that we have control over that we should focus on with a lot of energy is just all of the due diligence that we can do. So protecting yourself in terms of your inspection, protecting yourself in terms of looking at comps, looking at the market value, feeling really confident in our opinion on the market value, doing all the due diligence you need to make sure that you're buying the right property. Yeah. Working with local experts who can give you the advice that you need, making sure that you're making all the big and little decisions to set yourself up for success. Yeah.
I love that. And you'll be along with them for the whole ride, from start to finish, and kind of being like an advocate really for them along the way. I love the way you talk about your clients. I love your energy, and I really appreciate this conversation because I had a really good time getting into the nitty gritty as we discuss some of these concepts. And I can't wait for next time, man. I appreciate you.
Very mutual, buddy.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
See you next time, brother.